This is episode 20 of Healthy Kids, Simple Solutions. I'm your host, Dr. Stevenston, out in Elkhorn, Nebraska. And what we're going to be talking about on this episode is nonverbal children. And this can be they are completely nonverbal, they're late to talk, they have a lowered vocab from what they maybe should have for their age. Those are all what we're going to be talking about today. And what I'm going to be going into is what I specifically see in these kids, kind of what I'm looking for through my lens and what my thought process is and what I'm looking for. So to just jump right into it, the very first thing I'm looking for when any kid that's nonverbal comes into the office is I want to see if they have what are called primitive reflexes. And these are also called infant reflexes. So what they are the reflexes you have as an infant, and you have them as an infant until about 6 months of age. And they're really there to just kind of, I say they're training wheels. They're to just kind of keep everything going for those 6 months of age, help you survive those first 6 months, and then at that 6 month mark, or roughly around there, they go away, and then the brain continues to develop. What I found is kids that are nonverbal don't get rid of them at that 6 month mark. So they might be 2, they might be 3 or 4, and they still have these primitive reflexes, and they could be 18, 25. There's not really a specific age where they automatically go away. And what I'm specifically looking for, the two primitive reflexes that I most commonly see in kids that are nonverbal is 1, a Palmar reflex, and 2, a rooting reflex. So what are those? You're probably actually familiar with the Palmar reflex. If you ever see an infant and you were to go like this in their hand, they close down on it, right? So you go like this, they close, they close. Anytime you stimulate right here, they reflexively close down. And that is one of the infant reflexes. And it should go away, like I said, right around that 6 month mark. And if it doesn't, what happens is it stays there, and then it has a big effect on speech and articulation. There's actually a big hand-mouth correlation. And also the rooting reflex is if you ever stimulate around here, if you do this to an infant, they actually turn to suck and feed. It's a reflex that we have. And if that's still there, then that also does not allow the muscles to fully develop. It doesn't allow us to speak and articulate on time. So that is the two things that I check for in the nonverbal kids is 1, if you go like this to your child if they're nonverbal and they still kind of close their hands in or close their fingers in, and if you go like this and stimulate around their mouth and they either turn their head towards you or they make kind of a reflexive kind of movement with their mouth, or if they make kind of a scrunchy chin, or they do something reflexively with their face every time you're brushing around their mouth, there's a good chance that they still have this rooting reflex and or Palmar reflex, and those are the two that I really want to first check for in nonverbal kids. And the reason that that's important is because if you have primitive reflexes still past the age of like 6 months, it's a direct window in saying that the brainstem did not fully mature and it didn't efficiently develop correctly. So why that's important, why does it matter if their brainstem is not developed properly, it's not running efficiently, is because that's going to tell us the rest of the brain is going to be really stressed out all the time. It's going to be kind of in that elevated fight or flight state. So if your brainstem did not fully develop because they still have these primitive reflexes, like you go like this, they close their fingers down, or you brush around their mouth and they're doing this reflexive movement with their face, it's saying the brainstem did not develop properly, and therefore the rest of the brain wasn't able to develop properly or not develop as efficiently as it should have, and that's going to stress out the brain. So the brain's going to be super stressed. It's going to be in this fight or flight state, and when that happens, when we're in a fight or flight state, something called our social engagement system downregulates, and that is what we use to read facial expressions, nonverbal cues. That's how we really communicate with someone, is when our social engagement system is allowed to develop and flow. So if we are calm and collected and our brain's not stressed, our social engagement system comes clear up, and then we're able to really connect with people and communicate and verbally talk what we want to talk about. But if you think about, let's just say, back in the caveman era, and I see a tiger over in the bush, and I see it, my brain does not care at all about talking, about reading social cues, about any nonverbal things. The whole social engagement system completely either shuts off or completely downregulates. And so your brain doesn't care about it. All it cares about is survival. So if we fast forward to today and we see these primitive reflexes, that's saying that the brain is stressed out, the brainstem didn't develop properly, we're in that fight or flight state, the social engagement system is downregulated. That means that our social engagement system's down. We're not going to be able to read social cues the way that we should. We're not going to be able to read nonverbal cues, and that is not going to allow us to speak properly, or that's part of the reason that kids are nonverbal. So that is directly from Dr. Stephen Porges' work, who does the polyvagal theory. It's really awesome. I recommend if anyone has a kid who's nonverbal, I would read that book. It's really good. It's all about how when our nerve system gets stressed, our social engagement system goes down, and that can lead to things like nonverbal communication and verbal communication not happening. So that is why in our office we will always test the nerve system and see if it's in that kind of gas pedal elevated mode, because if it is, that's telling us that that social engagement system is not online the way that it should be. So primitive reflexes, checking to see if they're in that gas pedal state. And the third thing is seeing hemispherically, is one side of the brain stronger than the other. And the reason for that is our left side of our brain is really in charge of verbal communication, or more predominantly verbal, and our right is more nonverbal. And I've seen it both ways, where maybe the kid has a weak right brain, meaning that their nonverbal brain is lower, and that actually is going to cause them to be nonverbal sometimes, because they are so bad at reading nonverbal cues and social cues that they're not able to properly communicate with people through speech. And I've seen it the other way, where the left side of the brain is really downregulated, and that is our verbal side of the brain. So then obviously you can connect there that if the verbal side of the brain is downregulated, they're not going to be able to speak and articulate the way that they should. So those are really the three things and the three checklist things that I go through whenever I see a kid with nonverbal tendencies or has not been talking at all and should be. So that's what I do. I always recommend for parents that have a nonverbal kid is to get them in for a primitive reflex assessment and nerve system testing to see if that's what is possibly contributing to their nonverbal issues. And so the way that you do that is simply by calling the office, 402-504-4676, or you can message us right here on Facebook and direct message us. If you ever have any questions for me, by all means, give me a call or message me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you ever want to set up a consultation and talk about your specific case, I'm more than happy to do that for you. But if you see this video and you're scheduling it from this video, or you heard about us through this, then mention it and you will get a $50 Amazon gift card when you schedule that initial nerve system testing and primitive reflex assessment. So if you found any value, or if you really thought this information was valuable, if you could give our page a like, I would super appreciate it. It would mean the world to me. If you could like, comment, or share any of my content and just help spread this to other parents that could use it, I would love that. Hi Amanda, thank you for jumping on. And yeah, so that's all I have really for today. It was all about nonverbal communication, and those are the three things that I always look for in these kids. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to jump back on Monday with another episode of Healthy Kids Simple Solutions, which will be episode 21. So I will see you guys then. Have a great weekend. See you Monday.